Bonn Park is supported by Bangkok Cuisine. This restaurant is located in Kitchener but rooted in Thailand. The moment you experience their blend of flavors, spices, and aromas, you know that you're going to get top-of-the-line Thai. From zesty apple salad to comforting coconut curry, Bangkok Cuisine's authentic Thai dishes will send your taste buds to a faraway beach. Perhaps you could start your journey with the crispy calamari stir-fried with peppers, garlic, and 5 spices. Or try grilled bamboo skewers of tender grilled chicken served with peanut sauce and a cooling cucumber sauce. Much care and tradition goes into the preparation of every curry, every noodle dish, and every serving of the restaurant's signature specialty, beef a la Thai. Of course, some people consider pad Thai to be the true test of a Thai eatery's talents. Their version comes steaming, filling the air with scents sweet and sour. The heat of the noodles is offset by fresh, crispy bean sprouts and crushed peanuts. Trust us, you want this. Feeling brave? Those with adventurous taste buds can crank up the heat. Dishes start at a comfortable and delicious no spice ranking, but climb through mild, medium, hot, extra hot, and top of the line. The restaurant has a Polaroid wall of fame in tribute to those who have endured the extreme heat top of the line. Bonn Park's very own Marshall Ward did it once. He got his picture on the wall and everything. There are also plenty of vegan and gluten-free options, including their Thai peanut noodles, gang gai, and the richly warming Penang. Bangkok Cuisine is located at 1500 Weber Street East in Kitchener. The restaurant is currently open Monday to Sunday from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. for takeout only. You can order by calling 519-748-7676 or visit them online at bkcuisine.ca. Enjoy your trip.
Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Welcome to Bonn Park. I'm Sara Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
And today we have Dave McPherson.
Yeah, David wrote an amazing book on music called The Legendary Horseshoe Tavern, The Complete History. And it's one of my favorite rock and roll books of all time.
One more time, we have one of the coolest people in our city.
Yeah, no doubt. He's also writing a book on Massey Hall now,
which is very exciting. And his Horseshoe Tavern book is soon going to be an audiobook, which is pretty exciting. And he tells us all about that. This book about the Horseshoe Tavern has rave reviews by Dave Badini, Alan Cross, Josh Finlayson, and also a foreword by Jim Cuddy.
Yep, David's going to take us back in time with this podcast to the Canadian rock renaissance.
Here's our neighbor we didn't even know was our neighbor, Dave McPherson. Dave McPherson, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming on short notice.
No problem.
On this stormy night. I'm hoping we're not losing power.
Yeah, let's see.
I want to find out how you and Marshall met. Who's going for it?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I think it was about 3 years ago. David reached out to me because he knew I wrote for the Waterloo Chronicle newspaper. And he said I wrote a book on the Legendary Horseshoe Tavern. And David must have seen that I've written about music here and there. And that was right in my wheelhouse. Like, I remember I wrote back, absolutely, I'll write about that. And I think you came to my house and dropped it off on the front porch, and we chatted briefly, and we talked about how we actually don't live too far away from each other. And anyways, that book for me is one of my absolute favorite books written on music, and I'd love to talk about that book. So take us back to that book, The Legendary Horseshoe Tavern, The Complete History, and what the life it's had since you wrote that. Let's start there.
Sure, yeah, thanks. I mean, it's very humbling that you say that. I mean, this book has been a real labor of love. It was my first book. I dreamed of one day writing a book, whether it was a novel or nonfiction, and I've always loved live music, and I've loved to read lots of other music books, so it was kind of a natural when I was looking to kind of do a book, and there was a bit of serendipity involved, as I find there is often in life, but you got to put yourself in places and be in places, and good things can happen, and then you have to act on them. So I think that's kind of what happened here, that I knew the Horseshoe was coming up on its 70th anniversary in 2017, and so a couple years before that, I mean, I just happened to be out at the Dakota Tavern, which was another one of the favorite live music bars when I was living in Toronto. I like to frequent. And watching the band, I can't even remember who was playing that night, but I was talking to a fellow music writer next to me and said, I've wanted to write a book on music for a while. And he mentioned, I know this publisher, Dundurn Press, that is getting into more and more music books. I can pass along the editor's name. So I said, sure, great. Followed up, got his email, and he gave me the editor's name, and basically I fired off a bunch of ideas to them for consideration. One of them was a book on the history of the horseshoe, because it was a place I'd frequented a lot. I knew it had a incredible history. It opened in 1947, and it was a real part of Toronto's cultural history that I thought, surprisingly, it had never, no one had ever really written about it in a book form before. So, the fact that I was the person, again, I feel very lucky. I go forward a bit to, the night of my book launch, which was like October 17th at the Horseshoe Tavern, and myself and the majority owner, Jeff Cohen, were down doing an interview at CBC Studios, and on the walk back or walk there, it doesn't really matter, but my dad came with me, so that was kind of neat that he was part of that evening. But Jeff turned to my dad and said, it says a lot about your son that, he's the one, that's writing this book, or that, wrote this book, because over the years we had, tons of people, obviously, that came to us, and pitched an idea for a book. But, David basically came, and he was doing it for the right reasons, if you will. And as I might have mentioned before, for me, this was a labor of love. It was a real passion. I've never been one of those writers that I want to find the dirt, if you will.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking you probably came to them. I'm thinking about some of the acclaim in the front of your book. Josh Finlayson of the Skydiggers said it's an incredibly important document. And when I read that before I got into it, I was like, oh, we're looking at this like it's canon. This is part of our history. This is part of our heritage. And you probably went in there with that attitude, like, I don't want to know what happened backstage. I don't want to know who got in trouble. I want to document the historic value of what this meant to us, right?
Definitely, yeah. And that's what Jeff said. I basically met with Jeff and his other partner, Craig Lasky, had lunch, at the Rivoli one day in the patio and pitched him this idea. And that was part of my pitch. I'm not looking to, dig up the dirt and tell the negatives or find out what happened really behind the scenes. At the same time, wanting to tell some of those stories, within reason. But I think that's why they decided to, that they bought in. And that was the thing. Even though before I went to them, the publisher had already committed to me and I'd signed a contract, it was kind of tentative based on getting their buy-in. Because again, I wasn't going to do a book without having them behind me. And because I knew that it would be much more difficult, and I also wouldn't get access to, the contacts they had and resources, which, was definitely a huge help, and I can't thank them enough. As I said, they hosted my, book launch there. They helped me a bit with publicity surrounding that. They hooked me up with all the former owners of the bar and some artists, musicians that I didn't have contacts for. They made those introductions. So
and those introductions that make the difference, because you're documenting the legacy of the hard work that these people put in and day out, and what went right and what went wrong, and how things transpired that way, but not necessarily, again, the dirt.
Yeah.
Right.
So let me get this straight. The first book idea you pitched, you got a publishing deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm very lucky, and I know I realize that.
Nobody wants a workshop from you on how you.
No, well,
it's supposed to be like 1,000 rejections.
Right. And I don't get me wrong. I have been rejected many times when it comes to my writing over the years. Pitching magazines and pitching other publications. But yeah, as far as this book idea, it was surprising. I pitched them like 3 ideas, and right away they came back and they said our sales team, in a meeting the other day, were just throwing that idea around. So again, there was something that I just. Right place, right time.
Right place, serendipitous is the right word.
It was a bit serendipitous, but then I pursued it, and I guess, the fact too that I had the contacts, and that really helped as well.
I think the message there is for anybody who wants to try something like this, start today.
Yeah.
You never know.
That's it, right? I
Yeah.
think that is, Marshall, you joked about the workshop. I can't be one of those ones. The story. Everyone's heard all the stories of famous writers, Stephen King, and people who, right, rejected 17 to 50 times before they got their first deal or whatever it is. I mean, I lucked out with this, but I think it's one of those. It's no different. Even if I hadn't succeeded, I think that is the message. I mean, it is much easier today in some ways when you can self-publish, and everyone can, find a way if they really want to publish. They're passionate about something or have a subject. And the same token, I think it just comes down to perseverance too, and not letting that one rejection, if it does come, kind of stop you from pursuing that dream.
Did you see that book as an extension of what maybe was already out there? I think about a book like Have Not Been the Same, which is about the Canadian rock renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating. Just kind of, the Horseshoe Tavern would be in that book, of course, along with tons of other clubs. But I love the idea of it's almost like a branch that goes off and down its own road. And this entire book is just about that tavern.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, I was surprised that in one way, I mean, I was and I wasn't, that there would be enough for a whole book, on one bar. I mean, that's what a lot of people would be like, yeah, you wrote a book about, some tavern, but...
A tavern that's almost 100 years old.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's coming on, getting closer to 75 years old, and it's changed with the times. And with the incredible thing with that, I mean, you hear of other venues and other places that, have come and gone, like CBGB and New York City and, places in LA, or even right now, like the Troubadour, that are in trouble, with COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything. I mean, that's a really big issue. Before this all happened, these small independent clubs were already facing a lot of challenges with rising real estate costs and landlords that could easily just jack up the rent at no notice. And that's one area where the Horseshoe has been lucky itself. It's ironic in a way that it was called the Horseshoe, because there is a bit of that luck involved there, that the same family has owned the building since 1947.
Oh,
and
wow.
So they've realized, the ones who have taken on from what their father and grandfather started, Jack Starr, that as long as someone who's running it and still running it as a music club and a place and with the same passion, they're not the type that are going to take advantage and, try and sell it off to the highest bidder, that piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us through some of the names? I think when most people think of the Horseshoe Tavern, they think of Blue Rodeo, the Tragically Hip, Northern Pikes. You can go on and on, Daniel Lenoir maybe. And but there's so many names who came through the Horseshoe Tavern that people may not be aware of.
Yeah, well, the one for me is how it all originated, the big names in country music, because that's really how it started. And I think that in itself was kind of a neat story, that Jack Starr, who was the original owner, I mean, he wasn't even into music. He wasn't into country music, according to his daughter, as I said, who still kind of owns and operates the lease of the building today. It happened that, when he bought the building, it was kind of on a whim. He was looking for a change. He was kind of in the garment business. And, his daughter recalls coming home from camp and, Jack, her dad, saying, "Oh, I bought this tavern, on Queen Street," or whatever. But then
This is our life now.
Yeah, this is our life. But yeah, and she said, "Yeah, we didn't even listen to, a lot of music at home." But for the first number of years, it was more just a tavern. But then how music arrived was another neat story, that apparently Jack was just walking through the bar one day, and most of the patrons, or a lot of them at this time, were these, they were blue collar a lot, but a lot of them were not immigrants, but migrants from other parts of Canada, specifically the East Coast, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, PI, places, in the Maritimes, and they love their country music. And so that was the idea. Apparently Jack, walking through the bar one day, and one of the patrons said, "Hey, Jack, you should get some music in here." And He said, oh, okay, sure. What kind do you want? And they said, country, of course. So you talk about some of the famous names. I mean, Willie Nelson played at the Horseshoe Tavern. Loretta Lynn, Stompin' Tom Connors, Ernest Tubb, Charlie Pride, like all these Whisperin' Bill Anderson. So, these are all, country stars from, back in the day. And so it was known as Nashville North. But then, you jump ahead and you talked about all the Canadian acts that played there. But over the years, too, there's been so many big international acts that have played there, from the Police, who played, to maybe a dozen people back in the 1977, 78 era time. And the Rolling Stones actually played in that room in a pretty epic show in the late 90s. So it's really seen every genre and style of music, too. And that's what's really cool as well. I mean, there are some bars, some clubs that, they're known as a blues club, a jazz club, a punk club. But really, the Horseshoe's seen everything from country to punk to, hard rock to, indie rock to blues. I mean, it's all been in there. So, I mean, that's kind of a neat part of the story I learned as well.
And not necessarily sticking to one of those genres, sort of being open to any idea of a band that might pull a crowd and enjoy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure Sarah's had this experience where you're in a city and you come upon some legendary venue like this, and it could be so unassuming. It's kind of like, oh, this is it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have the best signage, and there could be like things on either side of it.
I'm thinking of the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville. When I saw that, I was like, oh, it's in a strip mall.
Yeah.
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 Okay. It's not like Madison Square Garden where you come around the corner and
it's like
yeah,
it's a presence.
Did you ever, David? Did you ever think of the Horseshoe and kind of like, can you feel its magic when you're in there, or are there times when you look at it and go, oh, this is a big long rectangle kind of thing? And do you remember how you felt about it when you first started really immersing yourself in it?
Yeah, I think, that's a good point. I did reference in my book, I said it is a dive, really, in many ways, right? It's a dive bar, but it's a beautiful dive, is kind of how I described it. And I think it is a magical place in one sense. For once you're in there, it is that, to use that cliche of, you think, if the walls could talk, because you think of all those people that have come through those doors and all the stories and all the music, right, that just lives on. And it definitely is palpable when you go in there, and it's something that, even though as a first timer you might go in and think, oh, this isn't too much, or this is what the Horseshoe, this is legendary.
This is legendary,
right?
Yeah,
but yeah, it's the current owners have done a great job at showcasing the history, at least for about the last 25 or so years that they've owned the place. Unfortunately, in the early 80s, there was a brief period where kind of went bankrupt, and a lot of the old memorabilia apparently was sold off and
ouch.
Yeah, not found. So, a lot of those early photos of some of those country artists and things are not there. But like I said, so even that part of it, that, there's a bit of that living museum, at least for the last kind of quarter century, of set lists and photos and, concert tickets and newspaper clippings on the right-hand wall in the back room, in the front room as you're walking in. So, that in itself, you can get a little feel for all the people that have played there, from the, like you said, the Tragically Hip to, Foo Fighters to, lots of American bands and, legends like Link Ray, that for those who may not know, incredible, guitarist that, so.
It's funny when you're talking about the magic. To me, that block of Toronto, that Queen Spadina block of Toronto, that's so magical to me. Because when you're young, living in KW, that's a whole different world. And that's what we were looking for, right? Mm-hmm. And like the shopping, the food, the people. Oh my gosh, I love the people watching. It was so cool coming from Kitchener, Forest Heights and Kitchener, to go down to Queen Street and see what was going on. When I was reading your book, I think you mentioned it maybe about 3 or 4 times, but I want to talk about the checkerboard floors. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of people want to talk about that with you. Yeah. It's a theme throughout the book, but when I was reading it, I emailed Marshall right away. I had goosebumps because I was totally transported. So I hadn't thought about those floors in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was totally transported to being young, listening to live music, remembering what that was like to be down there, and probably spent the day pounding the pavement, buying stuff and, people watching, like I said earlier. And just that beautiful time of when going to see live music was basically my life goal.
Yeah.
That's what we were working towards all the time. And then, of course, the lovely connection to the Tragically Hip's Bob Cajun. Gordani sings That Night in Toronto with its checkerboard floors, riding on horseback and keeping order restored, till the men they couldn't hang stepped to the mic and sang, and their voices rang with that Aryan twang. All of those things together for me, the men they couldn't hang, that was a wild concept to me as a youngster. Like, what are they doing? This is kind of wrong, and kind of beautiful. And their message is very clear. What's happening here. And then I remember that story of the wild raucous night that happened there, and putting that together, and I think there's actually even a line in your book where you do say, if these floors could talk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, probably.
So is it a common theme that people talk about that because of the hip putting it in their song?
I think so. You mentioned about the song, and that's an interesting one for sure, because there's a lot of different, like all of Downey's lyrics. I mean, he was known, he was very cryptic. And so...
To me, that's like clear as... This can be, it's crystal clear though. What is am I right about that?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, my understanding, there's a bit more to, those, who the horsemen were, and that, like, people have talked about it was a particular band and something you witnessed. But, I think it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's that image, like you said, about the floors. And what I take out of it is what live music means to people. And I think especially it just rings so true right now when we've been living through this pandemic for a few months, and live music has been put on hold, and
it's been taken away.
Basically been taken away from us. I mean, artists have been doing a great job with all these streaming shows and finding new and creative ways to present their art to us, but the reality is that these independent clubs, I think, like I referenced before, are small. Many of them, they're small businesses. They're run by passionate people. They struggle, at the best of times to, keep these clubs operating, because the margins are pretty slim, and they have to deal with, jump through a lot of hoops in terms of, city halls in their towns and the politics and rising rents. But at the end of the day, these places are so important to, like you said, yourself, so many people, our culture, and unfortunately, they're going to be probably one of the last ones to reopen from everything we've read with this pandemic, right? But what you said just is so true, Sara, that it's about those, it can be some little image or some feeling or word, and it takes you back to some show you saw. And that's what I find is so cool about live music, and why I love it so much. And it's something common that people who get it, and people who don't. I mean, I've met a few people who've never been to a concert, and it just blows my mind that I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few people, and I'm like, you're serious? Like, how can you not go through life and not, for me, live music is such an important thing, and it just that connectiveness. And I think throughout this, I mean, I've read a few amazing articles in the last number of weeks. There's one, I think, in the Atlantic by Roseanne Cash that just talked about that. I mean, she really painted an amazing picture about, she doesn't really miss the road, and, going into that, what life is like as a musician. We think it's all glamorous, but especially someone like that who's been in the business for 30 years, and all you do is see another airport, another town, whatever it is, but it's that time where you're in front of that crowd, that's what they miss, and that connection, and that you can't replace that. And it's something so special, right, that you're surrounded by strangers, but you're all there for the one reason. And somehow you come away with that shared experience that is all about connectiveness. And I think, especially during this time where we've been isolated, that connectiveness is going to be, is so important. And, I know it's going to be a while, but hopefully, we'll get there. And when live music returns, it will be a real kind of beacon of hope of that things are back to normal, of whatever that new normal is.
Whatever that normal is. Yeah, exactly.
What I find wild is how Sara just reading those lyrics to Bob Cajun evokes the same feeling I get from listening to the music. That's how powerful those lyrics are.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the fact that I know that song so well, like most people. But I think a lot of what you're talking about is how with these Canadian bands, we have this shared history with them and these feelings that awaken things in us that you wouldn't maybe feel otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the best shows I ever saw was at another roadside attraction tour at the Markham Fairgrounds.
Yeah, I was at that one.
And I remember it was Daniel Lanois, Hot House Flowers, Midnight Oil. Like Midnight Oil, like I'm thinking Heidi topped this, right?
Yeah.
And then the Tragically Hip came on and opened with Locked in the Trunk of a Car.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, the sun was setting behind the stage.
I've got little
And
I like goosebumps
we
happening
went
now.
into a sweat-soaked frenzy.
Yeah.
Like it was beyond anything I'd ever felt. There must have been 30,000 people there or something.
I think I
Yeah.
remember
big
at
field.
that show. My memories are a little muddled, but they sprayed people, right? Wasn't there
Yeah, they sprayed
hoses in
people,
that
yeah.
because it was so hot? Yeah, because I remember being right up front there.
And the oddest thing
the
is,
heat
so I
was
used to
just-
study the Tragically Hip set list. I love set lists and that.
Oh, I used
And,
to try and get taller so I could see set lists on the floor.
And the very last encore was that song "Get Back Again," which had
Ugh.
never been on any record, but I saw it from a Much Music Live special.
Mm-hmm.
And just, anyways, what an incredible time that Canadian rock renaissance was that I don't think I ever appreciated at the time. Is that how
Mhm.
you feel? You didn't really, you couldn't, you can only appreciate it as much as you can now in hindsight?
Oh, definitely. And I think partly too, just going back to the Horseshoe, I was really only introduced to it when I moved to Toronto and took my first job out of journalism school kind of in the late 90s. And so I came to it quite later than most, right? Growing up in Waterloo here, it's not like I would go down and go see a show at the Horseshoe, right? Any concerts I went to in high school were the big shows. When I did go to Toronto, it was at Maple Leaf Gardens or the C&E, that kind of thing. So in that sense, I feel I missed out on a lot in terms of the Horseshoe, and maybe some people would say, how can you be the one writing about this when, you were only there in the last 20, plus years. But, again, going back to that magic, I don't think it really matters when you discovered it. It's more that impact, like you said, that it has on you, and then, how you carry that forward.
Psst. This is an ad. Record Store Day, normally a one-day event in the spring but postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is looking a bit different this year for Encore Records in downtown Kitchener. Still in business after 39 years. Celebrating its 12th year, Record Store Day is now scheduled to drop over 3 dates: August 29th, September 26th, and October 24th. The worldwide annual event brings together music fans and thousands of independent record stores like Encore Records, who last year stocked over 150 new titles for the occasion. Some of the rumored exclusives for Record Store Day include limited edition releases from U2, Lucinda Williams, The Who, David Bowie, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Katie Lang, My Chemical Romance, The Grateful Dead, Prince, Pink Floyd, Billie Eilish, Eminem, and Johnny Cash. There will also be a ton of great soundtrack albums this year, from Austin Powers' The Godfather and Doctor Who to Shaft in Africa, Lethal Weapon, and a spice-colored edition of Dune. Mark Logan, owner of Encore Records, says he is incredibly grateful for the support of his customers who have been ordering records online from his site, encorerecords.ca, during these trying times for all independent record shops. Thanks to their strong online catalog and loyal customer base, not just locally but across the country, Encore Records is here for isolated music lovers, offering good prices, curbside pickup, and fast shipping compared to larger online retailers. Whether you're an audiophile or returning to vinyl after a long digital hiatus, Record Store Day is an occasion to celebrate places like Encore Records, where you can support both your favorite artists and a downtown Kitchener institution. Find Encore Records at encorerecords.ca, Facebook at Encore Records, and Instagram at Encore Kids. Sometimes music is all you need to make you feel better. There's, for me personally, I think I can probably speak for all of us in this room listening to us go on and on about this, but I think for me personally, there is nothing that has an impact on me the way that live music has, and especially when I was younger. I don't know why, right?
Yeah.
There's something magical about that. I think even my poor husband, I think he's embarrassed sometimes to go to shows with me. Because I'm not I was about to say I'm not myself, but I think I might actually be myself in those moments. I'm just enjoying it. I will sing along. I will close my eyes. I will, that beautiful feeling when you've got a bass drum that's just rattling right through your chest.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's a good feeling, you know? My kids are telling me I'm losing my hearing. I think I'm pretty sure I know why.
Yeah.
It's a combination of age and loud shows super close to the stage, you know? But yeah, there's nothing else that has that impact. And Marshall's going to kill me because I'm going to say this thing that I always repeat, but about MP3s being compressed.
That's okay. Go for it.
We can cut it out if you want, but because you're not getting that same endorphin experience from a file on your computer or on your phone that you're getting from getting those real vibrations in real time in front of your face.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, I'll admit I stream a lot. I have a Google Play subscription for, our family uses, and it's great to discover new music. But the same token, I still love vinyl and probably have 500 plus records. And that was one thing early on. And, during the self-isolation, I read an article that, talked about deep listening. And so you mentioned that. And I was trying to do that for a while where I'd just pick a record from my collection and I'd listen to it, side A, with the headphones
The
on.
way it was meant to be.
Yeah, lying on the floor and then flip it over, listen to it and try not to be interrupted and really, like you said, feel the music. Because so much, I mean, well, I have music on all the time, right? Whether it's I'm outside doing yard work or, getting the stuff done around the house, you're not truly listening. It's usually it's in the background and, that kind of...
Not the way you listen when you're young.
Yeah,
right?
That's it, right? But the cool thing with music too, I mean, a lot of people have talked about it, but it's, I joke, like my memory, sometimes I can't remember, what I did yesterday. I mean, but...
Or what I went to the store for.
Yeah, but it's incredible. Like, just in the last few days, I've got back into listening to Iron Maiden as an example. And, I remember all the lyrics because, I mean, I was really into them in high school and went to see them a couple times. And it's amazing. Like, I sing along like as if... And meanwhile, I probably hadn't heard some of these songs in, 20 years. So
I don't want to age us any more than we're already saying, but I saw this video last year sometime of a woman in her 80s with dementia who couldn't communicate anymore and had a hard time recognizing her family and grandchildren and all of that. And her nursing home rolled in a piano one day and she sat down and just started belting out songs and playing on the piano because it's deep in there, right?
Yeah,
it's back in that memory.
Yeah, it's amazing that you mentioned Iron Maiden. I think about how, put us into a big concert stadium or an outdoor field and run to the hills, and those same feelings will just fill you all up. You know? It's like, or Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. There's just certain songs. It doesn't matter how long ago they were. They're every bit as powerful as anything you can make today.
And you talk about the goosebumps, and for sure, I mean, that to me is a sign of a good song. I mean, I've had a chance to interview a lot of people over the years, and the one in terms of a songwriter, Chip Taylor is the one who wrote Wild Thing. I mean, the name might not be as well known to people, but thing that always sticks out in my interview with him, he basically, he knows it's a good song that he has when he kind of gets those goosebumps himself, right? When he is kind of writing the song or thinking of the melody or the words, and
He knows when he's hit it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really neat thing because we all know that it's something, whether, like you said, Marshall, I mean, for me, it's like you hear the opening of Bob O'Reilly from The Who or something like that. Just another one of those iconic that it kind of gives me those goosebumps. I'm just like...
I think about how Blue Rodeo Hasn't Hit Me Yet or Lost Together, all the songs people know, they take you to this place that just, you feel like you were there and you lived it, you know?
Yeah.
David,
5 Days in May does it for me for Blue Rodeo.
For sure.
Yeah. It's that first little do-do-do before it gets into it.
Yeah, I know it well. David, did you tell me in an email that you were working on a new book?
Yeah, I'm actually, I've been working on it for a little while. Now I'm doing another venue, a little bigger one, but I am working on a book. I'm actually just in the editing phase, so it's on Massey Hall in Toronto, and so one that's been around a little bit longer, over 125 years old, and incredible history. A little more daunting when I started working on this, but initially it was supposed to come out this September, but I think, thank goodness, with COVID and everything else, with the publishing business has been hit a little bit, and they had to take a pause as well. And we had a few other delays, and Massey Hall is doing a big renovation right now. They've been
massive one, right?
Yeah, massive renovation, which is everything I've seen, and I had a chance to go in for a few tours as last fall when it was, the construction and some of the restoration work was being done. But obviously, they were had to pause too with this, and they're just getting back to construction. So I mean. And with the whole live music scene, as we talked about earlier, I mean, they're probably not going to open till the new venue till, I'd say, fall of 21 at least, most likely. But so that's when the book's slated to come out now. So it's exciting. I'm kind of, as I said, in the process of doing some final edits to get back to the publisher, and then it will be moving on to getting all the photographs kind of finalized, and all the other little details leading up to it. So
that must be a bigger project to take on.
Yeah, in many ways, I guess it is, in terms of just the amount of research available. And I've always said, to me, that's one of the hardest parts as a writer, is that research phase and trying to determine what you're going to include, what you're not going to include, and
what's available.
Mm-hmm. And again, as I mentioned earlier about getting the backing of the owners of the Horseshoe for my previous book, it was the same with this one. And so I basically, after going to the publisher, they were on board. Great idea. I said I got to set up a meeting with the folks in Massey Hall, and I eventually had a meeting with the head of kind of marketing communications there, and the director of programming, and the president, and pitched them my idea, and along with the publisher in the room to talk about what it was we were looking to do. And thank goodness, again, they had faith and they bought into it. And in a way, my book will become kind of the official Massey Hall book, because there is apparently another one being done that apparently is more from the fans' point of view.
That's cool to have both, actually.
Yeah, in a way, I can't control what's that being done, but I guess my point with getting the buy-in, they gave me access to their archives, and once again, they've set me up with, I got interviews with people like Robbie Robertson and Tom Cochran, and just people that I might have got an interview, might have been, but again, some of these introductions were made directly by the the former president of Massey Hall, who unfortunately passed away in 2 years ago now. So
no, Robbie Robertson would have been difficult.
Yeah, I think so. So it really helped, to open those doors for sure.
I don't even want to ask what's next because I don't want to put it out there. I think when you get there, you'll have to come back and talk to us.
Well, with a bit of time left, I'm interested in hearing about your COVID-19 book
I'm
project.
interested in that too.
Yeah.
Sure. One other, you talk about what next, I do have some news I can announce on the Horseshoe book, which is kind of exciting. That there's going to be an audio book of it that will be coming out in August.
I love audiobooks.
Jeff Woods, who was Q107 for a long time, is narrating it. So that's been pretty. That's neat.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thanks. I
That's fantastic.
never imagined that would happen, but hopefully that'll give it a bit of a new life, and people who. Audiobooks are becoming more and more popular. I know my wife, that's all she does now. It's making her read a lot more. And I think it will just be a new way to discover it and hear that story.
I listened to Ozzy Osbourne's audiobook.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, Ozzy was not the one who
I was going to say, if he read it, that would be hard to decipher maybe. Well, the COVID-19, I guess like a lot of people, I was, when the pandemic hit, I was temporarily laid off from my part-time job. I was waiting for my Massey Hall manuscript to come back from the editor. I had a few other irons in the fire, if you will, but I found myself, at home, time in my hands, and a friend in the neighborhood who's a doctor basically reached out to me and said, because he knew I was a writer, and said that I think coming out of it, out of this and throughout this, there's going to be a lot of great stories of, frontline staff and the heroism and just the community and how people have come together. So, I mean, I threw it out there, and I was fortunate. I had a few media hits, so that helped. And the idea is, I've been gathering stories from the community, just of lots of examples of goodwill, and it's just been, the reason I did it was I felt I needed something to make me feel better too, and less anxious, and I guess hearing all these great news stories and seeing what an incredible caring community we have here in the Waterloo region would really help, and it has. So, I mean, I'm still gathering stories. I mean, the idea was to try and put it together as some sort of book at some point. But, that how it all will shape out and what the end product will look like or be, that vision isn't fully formed yet. But like I said, for now, I've got quite a few stories and always looking for more. So
I heard you say in there that you had time on your hands, so you thought you'd spend it this way. But isn't it when something big like this is going on and you have no sense of control over it? Isn't that when we create art, our best art?
Yeah, for sure.
Having said that, I find this time can be very draining creatively too.
Yeah, and I've heard that from a lot of songwriters and musicians I know that, some are finding this the most productive time. Others, it was a very difficult time, right? Because there is that kind of pressure, if you will, that, you think you've got all this time, you're not out touring, you better write. Well, the nature of art, as any artist will tell you, I mean...
You don't force it.
You don't force it, right? Yeah.
Before we go, I'm actually having trouble envisioning us coming back to a concert setting.
Same.
Like where, I mean, like no seats, we're all just packed in there.
Have you seen those images of like football stadiums in Europe with cutouts of people?
Yeah, I have.
I think you buy your ticket, but then you watch on your computer at home.
Yeah.
So I'm not enjoying hearing you and imagine how far away that could be. But at the same time, I don't know when we'll ever get back to that, David. Like it seems like you said, it'll be the last thing we get back.
I know, and that's what I guess makes me the most sad, because I have a lot of friends in the music industry, and it's not just the musicians, right? You think of all the other people, whether they're the roadies, the sound people, the music engineers, the publicists, the artist managers, like all those people. I mean,
people that work at the venues.
Yeah,
right?
all the venues we've talked about already, and the people that work at the venues. But how it's going to look, I think it will be much different. And I guess the same way we've seen that, the artists and the music industry has adapted and come up with some creative ways. I mean, you've seen all the great streaming shows and ways they've tried to get some of that revenue and still maintain that connection with their fans through these online shows. But what it will look like in person, who knows? Because I think there's going to be a lot of people. There's been some polls done recently, and I think things are starting to change. But yeah, a lot of those polls suggest that 6-8 months is still kind of the timeline before people actually feel comfortable to go into one of those larger shows, right? Like we gave my son for his birthday recently tickets to it was a Green Day, Fall Out Boy, and Weezer. A great triple bill.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, it was supposed to be at the Rogers Center, but in August. But who knows when that's going to happen, right? It's one of those deals where they haven't announced a new date, they haven't canceled the show,
haven't refunded,
but that's like a 50,000 stadium, right? If all the tickets are sold, and how do you are people going to want to go into a setting like that? And if they do, there's going to be a lot of fear still, and
our behaviors have changed.
And the behaviors have changed.
Yeah. Like I said, I passed you on the sidewalk recently and didn't know it was you, but probably because we were probably walking in the road, or you were. I don't remember what happened. Like, we're just moving out of each other's way naturally. There's an ebb and a flow that's happening, and that's not going to be an easy habit to break.
No. But at the same token, I hope that we can get there. And if you look back in history, I mean, this isn't the first pandemic that the world has faced, and I think there's a lot of positives that I see have come out of this, and you got to look at those silver linings. And but just that idea we chatted about in this conversation about the connectiveness of music and live music in particular, I think we need that. And, you know, whether it's in a small club of, you know, 100 people, you know, a very intimate setting, or it's one of those big raucous, you know, concerts at a stadium of, you know, 30 plus thousand, I think, you know, we will get back there. I mean, time will tell. I mean,
We just might be old and gray when,
yeah,
when it's
that's
time.
right.
You know, like I don't love being in a crowd of people on a good day, but for music, I will let that go. I will be in the biggest, sweatiest, stinkiest crowd of people just to listen to that music live.
Yeah.
And to go through that
Well,
experience.
music is the elixir of life, as David says.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Hey, thanks for coming on Bonn Park with us here.
No, thanks for having me. It was a
thank
real
you.
pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to listening to your book because I've already read it. So I'm looking forward to listening to it. And I'm really looking forward to the Massey Hall one. I think that's going to be exciting. Spent a little too much time there too.
Where can we find you on social media?
My handle is at McPherson.com, so COMM.
Awesome. So I hope you come back and talk to us with your next project.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And
All right.
all the best. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me again.
Thanks.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Hey all, thanks for meeting us in Bonn Park. Please like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on the platform that you're listening to. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bonn Park Podcast. Original music by Alan Lung.